Some women don't pursue, and yet they remain unforgettable. There is a rare, haunting softness in such a woman, a quiet gravity that follows long after her footsteps fade. She does not cling, she does not beg, she does not collapse into the need to be chosen. She simply withdraws, slowly, deliberately, like a moon disappearing behind drifting clouds. And in that subtle retreat, something inside a man begins to tremble. It happens before he consciously notices. A shift in her eyes, a gentler tone in her replies, a silence that feels heavier than words. The warmth he once assumed would always be available begins to cool, as if she is reclaiming pieces of herself he never knew she gave. He feels the distance first in his body, a restlessness in the chest, an ache in the gut, a sense that the emotional landscape is changing even if nothing has been spoken aloud. In Jungian psychology, this is the awakening of the shadow, the mirror he never asked for but cannot ignore. Her withdrawal doesn't punish him, it reveals him. It brings to the surface the parts he conveniently buried, the fear of abandonment, the fragility beneath confidence, the emptiness beneath pride. He feels exposed, even though she has said nothing. Her silence becomes a language his unconscious understands too well. He tries to rationalize the feeling. Maybe she is busy. Maybe she is distracted. Maybe he is imagining it. But deep down he knows. Something in her energy has shifted, and the masculine instinct senses it with an almost primal accuracy. Her absence presses on him with more power than her presence ever did. For some men, this shift brings out the stoic, the version of himself that seeks clarity, examines his emotions with discipline, and questions his own behavior. But for men shaped by unresolved trauma, anxious attachment, or emotional neglect, her silence isn't calm. It is chaos, a storm rising not outside, but inside, where childhood wounds, past betrayals, and unspoken insecurities lie waiting. You can almost imagine him alone at night, scrolling through old messages, rereading moments of warmth, replaying the tone of her last goodbye. He searches for clues, but what he's really searching for is certainty, the one thing she no longer offers him. This is where the first dark truth emerges. A man often realizes her emotional value only when it stops flowing toward him. Before she stepped back, he felt her softness without noticing it. He experienced her emotional presence without appreciating it. But now, in the stillness she leaves behind, he begins to understand what she actually carried, and how much of him depended on it. Her withdrawal activates the ancient dance between the animus and anima, the masculine and feminine energies within him. When she pulls her energy inward, she forces him to face what he becomes without it. Her retreat isn't rejection, it is revelation. He begins to sense that the connection was never just physical, nor merely conversational. She represented something archetypal for him, a sanctuary, a reflection, a place where the parts of himself he hides were quietly held without judgment. Her distance disrupts that sanctuary, and suddenly he is left alone with the parts of himself he does not know how to hold. This is where the second emotional shift begins. Memory becomes heightened. Moments he overlooked return with sharp clarity. The softness in her voice, the gentleness of her patience, the warmth in her gaze, all the small details he dismissed now feel monumental. This is the psychological haunting Jung described. The anima imprint, not because she tried to be unforgettable, but because she was herself in a world where most people perform. When she steps back, he isn't chasing her. He's chasing the version of himself he only felt when she was near. And you, the woman, become the silent guide he didn't know he needed. Your withdrawal becomes a mirror, not a message, a revelation, not a rejection, a threshold, not a threat. Without raising your voice, without demanding effort, without explaining your boundaries, you reveal the gap between his intentions and his emotional maturity. A man rarely sees how much emotional labor a woman carries until she stops carrying it for him. Her patience, her intuition, her nurturing presence that steadied him, her ability to understand feelings he never articulated. These gifts were once invisible to him. Now they glow like stars in a sky he took for granted. In the third shift, tension begins to form between his ego and his longing. The ego whispers that she wasn't that important, but the shadow, the deeper, honest part, knows he is lying to himself. Her silence exposes his internal conflict. He wants to reach out, but pride restrains him. He wants to stay distant, but fear pulls him close. His nervous system oscillates like a pendulum, unable to decide whether her absence is a threat or an invitation. His dreams change too. Jung believed the unconscious speaks through symbols, and now she appears in symbolic form, not as herself, but as meaning. She becomes the doorway in the dream he cannot open, the silhouette he cannot reach, the voice he hears but cannot interpret. She haunts the edges of his inner world, not because she is gone, but because she awakened something he didn't know he yearned for. Then comes the fourth shift, the quiet confrontation. He begins to face himself. Why did her silence cut so deeply? Why did distance feel sharper than conflict? Why does he crave the emotional certainty she once gave? The answers lead him not toward her, but toward the unhealed parts of himself. Her emotional detachment becomes the catalyst for his individuation, the self-realization Jung believed every human must undergo. Not because she chose to teach him, but because stepping back allowed his unconscious to speak. Meanwhile, the woman enters her own transformation. She is no longer the emotional caretaker. She is the sovereign, the centered, the self-possessed feminine who knows that distance is not always loss. Sometimes it is liberation. Her silence becomes her strength. Her stillness becomes her power. Her distance becomes her clarity. She is not punishing him. She is returning to herself. He recognizes this too, gradually, painfully, inevitably, that her energy wasn't submissive. It was sacred. Her patience wasn't weakness. It was devotion. Her softness wasn't emptiness. It was depth. And now, the final truth arrives like a slow sunrise lighting the edges of a dark field. When a woman pulls away, a man feels everything he once buried. Desire, fear, longing, insecurity, hope, rising to the surface. He realizes she was never chasing love. She was calling it forward. She was never trying to keep him. She was trying to meet him. And now, in her absence, he finally understands what presence meant. Because the woman who walks away in silence isn't weak. She simply sees more.